A very warm welcome to you from Equa Marketing. This presentation is brought to you by Equa.com, a leader in digital marketing.
Dr. Stephen Hatcher, welcome to Growing Dentist podcast series. I'm really glad to have you here as our third podcast on growingdentist.com. Before we get started, I would love for you to take a few minutes to introduce yourself. The reason I invited you obviously is because I have known you for several years and I've seen you grow and change along the way. And I know we do your marketing for you, so I kind of see you from a business side. I see you from as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. But I thought, as a dentist, you would have interesting insights to share with other dentists who are listening to Growing Dentist podcast series. So why don't we start by you sharing a little bit about yourself? When did you graduate? Tell us your story, and where are you today?
Great. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. So I'm Stephen Hatcher. I graduated from Chapel Hill in 2002 from North Carolina. I practice in Greensboro. My wife is a pediatric dentist where we have a 4-year-old daughter. I started off in dentistry. So I graduated. I had a military scholarship for dental school. So I was fortunate I was able to graduate dental school without any school debt. But I owed Uncle Sam, 4 years. And in those 4 years, I got to really hone in on, clinical excellence. So I really got to just try to be the best dentist, that I could be. And I had a residency, which was awesome. And it was just incredible to be able to work beside, a specialist and them just show you the tricks of the trades. And so it was a great 4 years of my life. I learned a ton about dentistry, didn't learn anything about running a practice, nothing about practice management or anything. You just came to work at 8 and went home at 5, and it didn't matter if you saw one patient or 30 patients. There was no real incentive to work, but I was brand new and I was hungry, and this was all new to me. And all the most of those, a lot of the senior dentists in the clinic, they were sort of fat cats, and the more I did, the less work they had to do. So I was real hungry, so I got to do a ton of work, which was great for me. That's all I wanted to do. And it was a great 4 years. It was kind of neat. They trained us to be able to, in our 1 year residency, to be able to handle just about anything that walked in the door, because they wanted to be able to send you, to Iraq or Afghanistan, and be able to, you're not going to have necessarily an endodontist or oral surgeon there, so they wanted you to be able to handle just about anything. And so after that year, they sent me to Korea, which was great. I'm half Korean and got to see my roots and see some family over there, and travel while I was in Asia, which was awesome. And just made the best of it. A lot of people go to Korea and they just cry about it all the time, but it was a great assignment. And got to travel to places that are just hard to get to from the U.S., like China, Thailand, and Vietnam. And then after that, I was in the D.C. area, finished my tour there, and my wife was finishing her pediatric residency. But the D.C. area was just a rat race, the Beltway, and I just felt like there's no reason to live there unless you have family there. I don't know why any professional would choose to live there. It was very expensive. At the time, it was during the whole housing boom. When we were there, and I was like, I just want to.
What year was this, doctor?
This was 02 to. We were there from 02 to 07. So that's when housing was doubling, all the time, and it reminded me of the stock market bubble when my assistants in the clinic were talking about how much their house was worth, and it just reminded me of the stock market bubble when you went to McDonald's and the guy taking your hamburger order was asking you, what did Cisco close at today? So I was just thinking, like, oh, we got to get out of here. This is gonna burst. So, and we have, both of us are from North Carolina, and I just wanted a simpler life. So we were open to North Carolina. It was kind of crazy. Sona was working. We were both working, and I wanted to get back south to North Carolina, and so I quit my job. Without I thought it would be easy to find a practice. Like, I would see these emails and these listings all the time when I was in the Army and say, look, look at this. I could buy this one. I could buy this one. All these opportunities in, Raleigh, Charlotte, everywhere. And just seemed like there was, opportunities everywhere. And,
right.
Well, let me back up a little bit. So I got out in 2000. I got out of the Army in 2006. And
one of the things I kind of wanted to highlight is that, just talking to you for the last few minutes alone, I kind of get the feeling that you look at life as, even something that other people might consider as, oh, well, it's painful, like, serving in the Army and going overseas and stuff. You look at it as an opportunity, right? And it's commendable that you graduated without a lot of debt, and and also, like you pointed out, the fact that you don't have any help and you have to be kind of independent, that was a blessing in disguise because it forced you to really get good at the clinical side of dentistry. That's amazing,
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of debt, so I didn't have any debt, and there's two options. When you get out of the Army, the two roads most people take. They either associate or they go buy a practice. And
right.
The third thing that's a possibility that I don't think is very wise is doing a startup. And this real successful guy out in Northern Virginia, who I still keep in touch with occasionally today, was building a startup practice. It's going to be brand new. It's going to have all the bells and whistles and all that stuff. And I was like, I got nothing to lose. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. Why not? I don't. I was used to making $50,000 a year in the Army, so it's like anything's going to be better than what I'm doing now. And so I was like, let me go see what it's like to go do a startup. And it was great because there was no risk. I mean, he was the one who was on the hook, for the loan, and I didn't care. I didn't really care, what I was making because I didn't have any bills and that sort of thing. So I was like, all right, let me go check it out. And I learned a lot in that year. And the biggest lesson I learned is I never want to do a startup again. and it's a lot of work, and you're working out systems. But by the time I left, that practice was doing extremely well. But I still wanted to get back home, back to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, it was a dumb decision. On the other hand, it was smart. So I quit my job there before I even found a practice here. And because I didn't have debt, I really didn't need a lot to live on. And Sugar Mama was working. We were just living in an apartment, and so it really, in hindsight, I could have continued to work there as associate, make money, and then just on the week, take some, time off on, some Thursdays and Fridays to travel to North Carolina to find a practice. But on the other hand, it was smart because I think it was a smart move, is because it forced me to make a decision. It forced me to find something. And then I would have, if I wouldn't have done that, if I wouldn't have quit, I would have just maybe I would have become complacent with the situation. So it forced me to make a decision. Then,
it's kind of interesting. There's a story about Napoleon, right? I think one of the things supposedly he did is, he had an army that was small, and they're in this new island. He burns all the ships because if you don't have a plan B, you're forced to, do something. You cannot dilly-dally and, kind of be on two places or two minds.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes when you're going for a bold, hairy goal, sometimes you got to burn the bridges, you got to burn the boats, and just
Right.
figure it out. And yeah, so I think it was a smart decision overall.
I agree. So you sold up. I mean, you left, you quit, you moved to North Carolina. You have nothing, and now you have to make a decision. You have to make things happen. This was in 2000 and when?
So I quit. It's kind of interesting. So we got married in 2007. My boss came to the wedding. So we got married in May, and then in June, July, that time frame. Shortly after that, I we went on our honeymoon, went to Fiji, and then came back. And I was like, I don't want to live here anymore. And so I just put in my notice, put in my 2 weeks, and it was a great experience. We're left on great terms, and we reconnected not too long ago. And so then the next chapter of learning was when I came to North Carolina. I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy. And I just remember, I don't know what it is with dentists, but I would look at practices, and it was like I walked into a time machine. And it's like, good Lord, I don't understand how any patient would want to go to some of these practices. And I looked at them, I was like, good Lord, if you bought anything, and it's like, that's the golden goose that lays the eggs. I just don't get it. It's like shag carpet, just stuff that I wouldn't, I was just like, good Lord, I walked into a time machine. And I just looked at practice after practice. I was like, good Lord, what's wrong with these guys? The golden goose.
This is in what year was this again? 2008, did you say?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2007, 2008. No, 2007. And I was just like, good Lord, this is crazy.
So these practices were not. I mean, it's almost like they forgot that there's a human on the other side, and they're going to pay attention to the carpet and all the other little details, not just dentistry.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like if you were going to sell your house, you can't expect. I mean, I don't know. I guess people buy them, but if you want top dollar, it's got to be updated.
Right.
I think. And that's how I looked at it.
Everything.
Yeah, and I was just like, So then I was looking at it, and I was just like, well, you spend this much money, $600,000-$700,000. I mean, you could start a practice for less than that. And but then I went back to the the mindset. I was like, gosh, I don't want to do that again. I just did that a year ago. I don't want to go start from the ground up. I think it's much smarter to buy an existing practice, and that's what a lot of people had told me. I just didn't realize that it's just hard to find good practices. And then when I finally found one in Greensboro, where my wife is from, I was like, oh man, this is a home run. I got CEREC, I got digital X-rays, all computers and all the ops. I can just come in and start, day one. It was great. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, all right, we're gonna do it. And there was all any your first one, the first time you do it, it's pretty nerve-wracking. There's lots of questions you ask yourself, like, is there any dentistry left to do, and all sorts of things. But it was one of the best decisions next to marrying my wife, that I made was buying that initial practice.
Right. So you took the time. You found the practice that was modern, that was run by a person who was business savvy, and you're glad you took the time to find that right practice and buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was it was a fair it was fairly priced, and it was up to date, and it was it was a no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer, and
Right.
it was great.
And this was in 2007 you bought the practice, right?
Well, that's when I identified it, and I think I identified it like in probably like September, October, somewhere around there, and we closed in January, I think,
Right.
2008.
Let's kind of fast forward. Let's see, okay, you bought the practice in 2008 Jan, and then I just wanted to kind of, hear your story, but I want to hear it from the point of view of growth, right? What I mean is, I have worked with dentists over the last 8+ years, 140 plus, current clients of mine. And I see that they change. They change, as they go through life in terms of how they look at the world. Typically, this is human nature, right? We all want a bigger future. And typically, when we talk about a bigger future, we are talking about purpose, money, time, and relationships. So here you are, you bought the practice. Obviously you don't have any debt, at least from school. That's a plus point. You had learned a lot because, you were in the Army, so that's a plus point. And you have worked at a startup, and you have, some experience. But still, you're pretty, young and green, and you just got married, and you're starting out. So how did you look at the world back then? I mean, what was your purpose back then? And then how did it change, as things progressed, as you started having a family, and where is it now? So talk to me about your journey with purpose in 2008 versus along the way and now today.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, originally, the purpose was simple, was to pay the bills, and when you first, the first time you do it, and you're on the hook, and you sign that, that initial note, you know, each month, you start out and you have a great month, you have a good month, and you're just like, man, can I do it again? And then you do it again. You're like, man, can I do it again? There's this, and you do that over and over and over, and it's like, it takes a while to get used to it, to the point where you're like, okay, this is normal. We're gonna, make it happen. So originally, the purpose was to
just pay the bills. Just make
pay
sure
the
that
bills.
the banker is happy and everybody's happy, and you're making things work.
Yeah, that was the original purpose, and then as we got more comfortable, with things, with the cash flow and everything in the office, then that just sort of evolved into, we just started, then we started letting go a little bit in terms of, we would start doing weekend little jaunts. We would fly, last minute, go to, I remember one time we went to, to, Acadia at the last minute, Acadia National Park, and, we just started enjoying life, and just really enjoying our marriage and having fun. We really, I wouldn't say we really had a real deep higher purpose. In the beginning, we were just laying the foundation for our marriage, and at some point we started to feel like, man, something's missing, and that's when we started, working on, really working on a family. Like, okay, a couple of years have gone by, why aren't we pregnant yet? So then that sort of became a big focus in our life. And I'll tell you something interesting. We got engaged August 26, 2006. And the reason I know that is a year or so ago, I was upstairs in the house, and I saw this lava rock from Hawaii, and it said, "Congratulations, August 26, 2006." And I looked at it, and I was like, wow. So that's when we got engaged. My in-laws were vacationing in Hawaii, and that's when I proposed to Sona, was August 26, 2006. The reason that number is significant is because my daughter was born to the day 6 years later.
Wow.
So I looked at that rock. I mean, so there's like I don't know. It's just, I don't know if that's, and highly unlikely that's just chance. But I just remember looking at that rock. Like, oh my! I didn't even, hardly anybody knows when the day they got engaged, but everyone knows their anniversary and their kids' birthday. That's right. But I guarantee you, when
Especially men,
unless
right?
it was,
We definitely don't remember.
yeah, unless it was like Valentine's or 4th of July, something that's unforgettable.
Right.
Most people don't know the day they got engaged, unless it's tied to a certain thing. So that was just kind of I was like, I looked at that, I was like, wow, that's really something.
So it's kind of funny, right? The way life works out. It just sometimes looking back, it's like, wow, you can't even, like it's unbelievable. It's almost like it feels like it's random, but it's not. There's something bigger, right? And but like most people, when you started out, you just wanted to survive. You just wanted to make it work one day at a time. And as you went along, your confidence grew, your capabilities grew, and your view of the world grew, right? I mean, it was not just about making ends meet or making money. You started thinking about life, your relationship, your family, and like you mentioned, you started enjoying life, and that kind of leads me to my next question around time. So
let me back up a little bit on
at
purpose. Let me back up a little bit on purpose too. So the other thing I would say, like from a clinical perspective, so at the very beginning, it was, I did mainly need-based dentistry in the very beginning, and as I did more and more CE, and my eyes were opened to the possibilities of beyond just the the functional aspect of dentistry, and started studying the cosmetic stuff. Then I started to, dentistry started to change for me, and I started to see, like, can really have some dramatic impact on people's lives with their self-esteem and that sort of thing. And that, I became a student, a really hardcore student of high-end CE, with the Dawson Institute, Spear, Pankey, and really studied it. And the problem or the challenge with these institutes is they teach you a ton of stuff of just a way to do exceptional dentistry. And what they don't teach you well, at least in my opinion, maybe I was sleeping during it, is how to get it off the shelf. And that's really important, And one of the things that, I don't know if people have picked up on this, but if you go to, Spear Lecture or, any guru, a lot of their cases are dentists and hygienists. And I don't want to say they're not practicing in the real world, but a lot of those guys are not practicing in the real world. So of course they don't have to do any marketing. They don't have to, do all this other stuff. They've established their name, other ways. And it'd be great if every single patient that walked in the door was a dentist or a hygienist who knew what they wanted, and they wanted this high-end dentistry. But next time you're in one of those lectures and look at their cases, I mean, yeah, they have some regular folks as cases too. But I think that's one little tidbit that a lot of people, maybe they realize it, maybe they don't. But what I think is important is the business aspect of it is how to get that kind of dentistry off the shelf into people's mouths to give people what they want.
Right.
So my
It's
purpose
interesting. So, right. So the purpose changed. So you started out by just focusing on just dentistry as, like fixing problems, right? Somebody has a toothache or somebody's, hurting or, there's something wrong, you're fixing it. Then you're realizing, I can make somebody smile. I can give somebody self-confidence. I can, do more than just fix a technical problem, right? So your view of why did I go to school and why did I end up doing what I'm doing, and then how do you look at dentistry started changing as well. And then you're saying the quote-unquote experts who know how to do these awesome things and, give somebody a better life and better smile, kind of in a bubble almost, right? And then so you had to kind of realize, and then you did realize that, yes, dentists who know the value of good quality dentistry, they're not the average person. So yes, you learn the clinical stuff, but how do you apply it to the real world? In Greensboro, North Carolina, with the average person, a mom or a dad, who has all kinds of things in their mind and life and responsibilities and maybe just living paycheck to paycheck or, depending on the demographic of the person. So it gets very interesting, right? It's not just the clinical stuff anymore. It's real world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of angles to it, and that's the problem is in dental school, you're just taught how, and rightfully so, you're just taught how to do the clinical aspect of it. But they don't really teach you how to run a business. They don't teach you how to communicate with, your team and, all maybe they did, but there's just not enough time to really learn that. And that's sort of, you learn that by baptism by fire. And, it's just, learning's in the doing. You can read every book on business, you can read every book on veneers and all this other kind of stuff, but until you go do a veneer, do a crown prep, until you're in charge of employees and that sort of thing, you're really not going to know what it's like.
Right. So tell me more. So your purpose. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my purpose. I became a student of, really front-loaded my career with a lot of high-end clinical CE, and then I started, reading, becoming a student of marketing and business. And I hired a coach who helped me with my practice in 2014, and that was Bill Blatchford, who made a huge impact on my life. And
I'm sorry, can you repeat the name again? I didn't hear that clearly. The name of your coach?
Bill Blatchford.
Bill Blatchford. Okay, got it.
And
right. So you learned the clinical stuff, and then you before you even got into the clinical stuff, you learned the basics, in the Army. Then you learned the clinical stuff, and then you got a coach who kind of started helping you see the real world and started helping you deal with the real world, right? How to talk to people, how to market to them, how to build their confidence, how to get them to say yes, how to manage a team, all of that stuff. All of the stuff that, you don't typically learn in a book, but rather you learn by experience, but having a coach to kind of guide you kind of helped you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I tried to, I was, in that time period when I was a student of marketing and a student of business, there's a lot of free content out there. You can listen to people's webinars, you can read their books and that sort of thing. But there's nothing like hiring the person who wrote the book, and they just shorten the learning curve. It's expensive not to do it. People think it's expensive to hire a coach or hire a consultant, and I say it's expensive not to, because if you're coachable and you're willing to learn, they can just shorten that learning curve so much faster than you could ever dream possible. And I say it's expensive not to. And I learned a ton from Bill and behavior, psychology, how people make decisions, and most people have no clue of how people make decisions.
Right. Let's kind of fast forward to today for a minute. So, you're very successful today, right? You bought another practice, and you are more of an owner slash entrepreneur than just a average dentist, working on people's mouths all day long. Yes, you still do that. You do the things you love, but you have a much bigger future today than you used to just in 2008, just a short 8 years ago. So how do you look at your purpose today? Where are you right now with your life?
So where I am right now in my life is I feel like I've sort of conquered the, I don't want to say money's not important, but time now is my new challenge. So I've done, very well for myself and for our family, and I've set us up for success. So now I don't know if most people feel this way, but I think after a certain amount, that you have and that you make, it doesn't matter as much. Then I think time becomes more important to you, and so that's sort of where I'm focusing on is time. So time is
You
money.
start realizing the mortality of life, and you have a limited time on this earth. So, and then like you said, you're confident that you have a good business, you have a good team, you have good people around you, you have a good brand. So this money that kind of kept you up at night, just how I'm going to pay my bills, is no longer in the back of your mind. It's something that you're confident on. So now really it's about time. So how has your view on time changed over the years? And again, talk about I believe you have a 4-year-old child, right?
Yes. You have a 4-year-old child, so this is precious time. And I'll give you, with wealth, gives you options, and in some ways, I think dentistry is tough because it can feel like a prison. If you feel like you're sort of trapped in those four walls and you feel like you can't get out. And so one of the things that I've adopted that I learned from Bill Blatchford, my coach, is to retire along the way. So my parents' generation and a lot of baby boomers, they didn't start enjoying life until they were old. And the old mantra was, save, save, save. And when you're 65, then start enjoying it. Well, nobody's even guaranteed to make it to tomorrow or the next minute.
Right.
My philosophy is that I adopted from Bill is, retire along the way and enjoy it along the way.
Right.
And I took, been taking since 2014 9 weeks off a year, which is ironic. Income has been actually higher, taking more time off, and so that's my mantra now is take time off, and
that's an excellent point, right? A lot of people, I guess the old map or the old way of looking at the world is you study, you get a job, you work, and then at 65 retire, and then you enjoy life. But by that time you're sick and too tired to do anything, and then it's almost like you get ready to die. But why should we do that, right? Why is that supposedly the way to live life? Why not enjoy every minute? Because like you said, your daughter won't be four. Is it a daughter or son, Dr. Hatcher?
Yeah, it's a daughter. Yeah.
Daughter, right? Yeah, so your daughter won't be 4 years old forever. She's going to be 4 only today, right? I mean, this year. So if you miss it, you miss it. So what's the point of life? You don't know your daughter, you don't know your wife, and you're busy making all of this stuff, and then you wake up one day and you're 65 and nobody cares and nobody wants to be with you because you were not with them when they needed you.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
interesting.
time is my new currency that I'm shooting
right.
for.
Right. So what you're saying is, so money and success gives you options, and then you take those options and you kind of figure out how do you now um, um, kind of decide how you're going to put your time, your relationships, um, you know. So in other words, it's a purposeful life. It's not just a random life. It's just autopilot and you do what everybody else does. It's a life that you choose. It's a life that you decide. It's a life that you design.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Makes
you know,
sense.
I want to change patients' lives, and I also want to change my team members' lives. And you know what I mean by that is I want them to be successful. You know, not only financially, we um, read books together as an office, and read books on psychology, sales, that sort of thing. And so then they grow, the practice grows, and they grow with their families. Um, so it's not just about working on teeth and that sort of thing. It's bigger than that.
Right. It's interesting. So your purpose, started out by just surviving to, really becoming a student of the clinical side of dentistry, and then realizing becoming a student of the business side of dentistry, and now you're kind of becoming a student of life, right? Living, and not just for you, but along with your team, along with your extended family, along with your patients, and hopefully helping them live better, helping them have a better life, helping them have more happiness.
Right.
It's interesting, right? It's the same life, same everything. It's just that the more you are a student, the more you are growing up, and that's amazing, right? So you're enjoying the journey as much as you're enjoying the destination.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of dive a bit deeper into this. So we talked about purpose. We talked about your new currency at this stage of your life. A young dentist with a young family, a 4-year-old daughter. Your new currency is time. And now let me get into relationships, right? Because again, there's a study done by Harvard that kind of said that they followed people over a 50-year period, and they kind of came back and said the happiest people were the people who had the best relationships. It's not money. It's not anything else. It's relationships. So how do you think about, you kind of alluded to this, we want a bigger future, not just for you and your family, but you wanted a happier, better future for your team as well. So how do you think about relationships, let's say, when you started out? And again, before I worry about or talk about patients, let me talk about, relationships in terms of your team. Like, how do you think about relationships with your team? Like, how did you hire people back then? How do you hire people today? How do you engage them today? Just curious. Like, I would love to learn from you.
Well, it's interesting. So I've evolved. In the past, I can the first question about how do I hire people? In the past, I would interview them. I'd look at the resumes and that sort of thing. But as we've evolved and grown as an office, I really don't do that now. And so we had a hygienist retire, I think last year, and we had the relationship where it's like, okay, well, give me notice, give me time to find your replacement, and everybody knows that works here. That you just can't give me 2 weeks. I put a lot of time, money, and effort in training everybody, and so you have to give me time to replace you. And anyways, so now the team, they go out, they put the ads out, they screen the applicants, they do the interview. So I'm like the last person, so if they make it past all those interviews, and I meet them, it's almost like a rubber stamp approval. They've got to get past all of that. And the nice thing about that is that, you don't want to say, hey, here's your new team member, and then they not get along. So it's really important that they that there's good chemistry, with everybody. So that's something that has changed. I think a lot of dentists just have a their biggest challenge and what keeps them from going to higher and higher levels is, I would say, two things. Number one would be leadership, and number two is they just don't know how to delegate. They have no idea how to delegate. And so I try to stay in my unique ability, which is dentistry. My unique ability isn't QuickBooks. It's not SEO marketing. It's not pay-per-click campaigns and that sort of thing. I know a little bit about it. You need to know a little bit about it, but more importantly, you need to know, well, who do I need to hire? Because your butt, when you're at work, needs to be in the chair with a handpiece in your hand, and that's what you need to be doing. But this friend of mine has a very successful practice, and he does the books. It's like probably over a $3 million practice. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Doing the QuickBooks? And he was like, I don't want my team to know how much I make or how much we make. I said, whatever it is, I think it's too much. Said, what are you doing the books for? Are you crazy? So I think that's it just blows my mind that how I remember I went through an exercise with him one year about expenses. I was like, okay, how much did we spend on supplies? This is when we were a little bit smaller, and they were going around the room, and somebody, the team was guessing, I don't know, 5,000, 4,000. And I said, how about try 80? This was probably 2013 or 14. And, dentists are, afraid to, they have an idea, but they have no idea that, how expensive it is to run an office. So they have no idea. And it just cracks me up that, they just think that the way people think about it. That's not your unique ability doing QuickBooks, and, your team thinks you make more money than you really do.
You hit on so many points. I just want to kind of highlight a few. It's interesting, right? I think part of you growing up is not just becoming a better clinician, the business side and the marketing side, but you kind of started growing up in terms of the way you look at the world, right? And I think a lot of people operate out of fear, right? Like you said, this $3 million dentist, practice dentist who still does his own QuickBooks. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, he didn't go to school for that. He probably doesn't know how to do it properly, and he probably doesn't enjoy it. Why is he doing it? And I think it's just that it's almost like, like I guess in most of our lives, we are kind of automatically pushed to the next step, right? Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, university, et cetera, et cetera. And we go on our own, and there's nobody to kind of help us go to the next step. We have to kind of figure it out. And some people, they just get stuck. They don't grow. They don't let go. They don't go to the next step, right? And you talked about another example, like, you said when somebody leaves, they are so committed to your team that they will wait and they will help you find a replacement. It's because you treat them like family, and you make sure that their future is as important to you as your future, that when they leave, they're not just walking out the door. They care about you. They care about the other team members. So now they are just fighting for your success even on the day they leave you, right? It's kind of interesting. The way you start looking at the world changes, and then the way other people start looking at you changes. It's, you're saying so many interesting things, and I just wanted to highlight those 2 points.
What's interesting is, like, it's just normal to me. So you just don't, when that's your operating system, you don't even think that that's anything special. That's just the way it is. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Doesn't everybody do that?
Right. And it comes back to, I think, the theme of the podcast is, growing dentists. So it's just that the word growing fundamentally means it's growing, meaning it never stops. It never ends, right? Till the day you die, you're growing. Right. And it's not just you growing alone. It's people around you are growing. Everybody's growing. Your wife is growing. Your team members are growing. Your patients are growing, right? And it's just a journey where we kind of share and, go together. And the other point you made is, unique ability, right? Which is, you don't want to be everything, because, you don't love everything. So why be miserable half your life? Why not just do the things you love, and then find other people who love the things you don't love to do or you're not passionate about? Like we do your SEO and your marketing and stuff, and you have probably an office manager who kind of, runs things for you. You have probably a hygienist who loves taking care of people's, day-to-day dental health. So it's kind of interesting. It's just, yeah, talk to me a little bit about, how do you go about, helping people understand their unique abilities, just like yours, and then how do you go about creating teamwork?
It takes leadership. It's creating teamwork, and it's not easy.
Tell me more. Give me some examples.
So I'll give you an example. Hygienists in our profession are just kind of notorious for, well, I don't do this and I don't do that. And they just kind of have the stereotype of being prima donnas. And I share in the success of the practice, and it's shared equally with everybody, and everybody's important. And so we have everybody in our office cross-trained, and we, as a rule, as a law, we try to come together as an office, come in together and leave together. So, what that means is, we set up for our first patient the day before, and the hygienist had no idea how hard our assistants were working to set up for the next day until they started doing that job. And then sometimes the hygienist had no idea how hard it is to answer the phone. And the phone's ringing like crazy because we take a lot of time off, so then that means that sometimes, an assistant is going to have to be covering the phones up front, or a hygienist is going to have to be covering the phones up front, and that sort of thing when the office is closed. And, until they experience it, it takes leadership to lead them to that. And it's all about, I can't remember what the question was, the other question, but I think it's all about questions and how you frame questions is the secret in life. Is nobody responds, at least in my experience, that well to lecturing or just telling somebody something. But, there's a real art form of asking questions, and that's, I think, the secret in case acceptance is asking questions. What's Julie? Mrs. Jones? What's important to you? What's your long-term goal? With your teeth. And just asking questions. Or asking your teammate when they do something that you disapprove of. So how do you think you did? With that scenario. With that patient. Do you think could have? Is there anything you think could have gone better? I mean, they're kind of loaded questions, but you lead people with questions of where you want to take them. And the same thing at home, same thing with your child. Acknowledge their feelings. But I think it's all about questions.
Right.
What have you found?
It's interesting. So, go ahead, doctor.
What do you think? What have you found?
Yeah, I mean, I know we started talking about unique ability, and I think we're talking about, how do we help people figure out their unique ability, and I know we kind of talked about several points. I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I kind of sometimes share the story with people that I know. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, by the time he was 18, he had grown his confidence so many times. He builds games with his buddies, and he sells it, and his dad is a dentist. I'm sure some of our listeners know this. Dad used to scream, from the dental shop downstairs to mom upstairs, and he's like, oh, I don't want mom and dad, yelling, and we are hearing all this noise. He develops this app so that they can communicate, right, between the dental office and home, and then by the time he was 17, he had built a company or a product that Microsoft wanted to pay $1 million for. And then by the time he's 18, he had grown his confidence so much, right? So he's not waiting for a job. He's not waiting for somebody to tell him or, ask him to do stuff. So listening to you talk, I mean, your confidence grew a lot, right? I mean, here is a person who just, took life as it came, went to Korea, did all kinds of fun stuff, and then, bought this practice and just wanted to survive, and then grew and grew and grew. And as you grew, your confidence grew, and not only did you grow, your team grew. So I think, secret to life, there are a lot of interesting things, and obviously one I think is asking questions, making people think, if I may use that term, right? I mean, you talked about case acceptance, right? It's never a lecturing to patients saying, you need this, you need that. I mean, there's a story that I still remember. It's, I went to this dentist locally, and I never met the guy, and people did stuff on me, and then he comes to me. He doesn't even know my name, and he's like, oh, you need this, you need this, you need this. It's going to be $20,000. He didn't even ask me, why did I even show up there that day, right? And, I mean, humans are humans. I think at the end of the day, whether it's dentistry or doesn't matter what you're doing with them, you have to listen to them. You have to ask them. You have to learn. You have to understand what they want, right? And then you have to help them get that. And then sometimes you can influence the way they think, and sometimes, you can just do what they want. But at the end of the day, we have to serve somebody, and serving starts with asking, right? It's so I think you're on to the point about asking questions, because it's really when you're asking genuinely, you care. It's about them. It's not about you. It's not about you doing some kind of how do I put it, some kind of like you pushing your agenda. It's really you helping them get what they want, right? And I think it's very powerful, right? And I think I think with technology and stuff, we are losing that human touch. So I think it's great that people like you, doctor, who are remembering that at the end of the day, there's a human being on the other side, whether it's your team member or whether it's your patient.
Well, that's your only weapon in the U.S. against managed care. A lot of people are complaining about reimbursement rates and that sort of thing, and it's you have to establish relationships with these patients. That's your only defense against corporate dentistry. And how do you do that? You got to get to know them. You got to ask them questions. Hey, how was your Christmas? How was your holiday? Happy New Year, and those types of things. And if you don't do those, if like the dental experience you had in Toronto, I mean, you're not going to be an ambassador of that practice. You're just not.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's about serving others and understanding what they want, and we talked about unique ability teamwork, and I think again that's the same thing, right? Find out what people want and what they love, and the other thing I kind of like you mentioned today, which I want to try myself, is helping people experience different parts of teamwork, right? Even somebody who's answering a phone, a hygienist who might think, oh, it's no big deal, but you have to do it for you to appreciate it. I think that's an excellent point. Almost like helping people live in other people's shoes, right? Like instead of living in your own bubble.
Right.
And this goes back to the point you were mentioning earlier, right? Some of the clinical experts, they work on dentists and hygienists. They don't work on real people, and it's nothing against them. It's just that sometimes this bubble kind of helps you not know what's important, right? So, and it's kind of interesting. Sometimes you have to burst the bubble and kind of live in the real world.
Right.
And I think success creates bubbles, right? That's unfortunate, but it is. So we have to somehow realize that and kind of go back to the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is a pretty long podcast. Usually we do 20 to 30 minutes, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Just to kind of summarize and add any points you want to add. So we talked about how you started thinking about purpose and how it changed and evolved. And obviously, it's still a journey. So I'm sure if I talk to you in 3 more years, I'm sure you would have grown even more. We talked about, your relationship with time, and we talked about, relationships itself and how you are changing the way you look at it, And anything else you want to add, Doctor, before we wrap up?
No, I think that's a lot
That's a lot.
a lot to digest. I mean, if they really,
Right.
if they really listen, if they really want to learn, I mean, I think that's I don't know, 10, 15 years of growth and evolution for me, and everyone's going to have a different journey.
Exactly. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed our conversation today, and I would love to have you back, one of these days, and talk to you more about, for example, relationships not just with your team but with your patients. Get maybe more in depth in terms of, how you work on case acceptance, and how you think about marketing and all kinds of interesting topics. So I really enjoyed it, Doctor. This is awesome, and I do genuinely appreciate you taking the time to, share with our listeners your life journey. This is not some, textbook answer. This is real life. This is, um, you know, blood and bones.
Well, I appreciate you and your team and everything that you guys have done, for our practice. It's really been great.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hatcher. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And hope to join you again in one more series of podcasts real soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.